The transport shuttle had barely finished docking when the rumors started spreading through the Galactic Unity Academy like fire through dry grass that a human was coming. An actual human from Earth. Students gathered near the viewing windows of the arrival bay, their various eyes and sensory organs focused on the shuttle doors. The Palori huddled together, their soft feathers ruffling with nervous energy. The Grenthians stood at the back, their massive six-limbed bodies too large to fit near the front. Even the usually calm Velesi had stopped their meditation exercises to watch. Everyone knew about humans, of course. The galaxy had been studying them ever since first contact 3 decades ago. They came from a death world called Earth, where the gravity was crushing, the weather was violent, and nearly every creature had evolved some method of killing other creatures. But the humans themselves seemed friendly enough. Strange, certainly. Reckless, absolutely. But friendly. The shuttle doors hissed open. Leo Hartwell stepped out into the arrival bay, a travel bag over one shoulder and a large transport crate floating behind him on an anti-gravity platform. He was tall by human standards, with dark hair cut short and calm brown eyes that scanned the crowd without any sign of nervousness. He wore the standard gray uniform of incoming exchange students, though he had added a patch to his shoulder that showed a planet with a single moon. Earth. The watching students whispered among themselves. They had expected something more impressive, perhaps. Humans were supposed to be terrifying death world survivors. This one just looked tired from his journey. A small Palori female pushed through the crowd and approached him. Her name was Nira, and the academy had assigned her as his roommate and orientation guide. She was barely half his height, covered in soft blue and white feathers, with large dark eyes that blinked rapidly as she looked up at him. "Welcome to the Galactic Unity Academy," she said, her translator device turning her chirping language into words he could understand. "I am Nira. I will be showing you to your living quarters." Leo smiled down at her, and Nira felt some of her tension ease. His smile was warm and genuine, nothing like the predator grimace she had been warned about. "Thank you, Nira," he said. "I appreciate you meeting me. It has been a long trip." "Of course," she replied, then gestured toward the crate behind him. "What is that?" "Your belongings." Leo glanced back at the crate. Something inside shifted, making the container rock slightly on its platform. "That is Duke," Leo said simply. "My companion animal. We're supposed to bring them for presentation day, right?" Nira's feathers fluffed up with excitement. She had almost forgotten about companion presentation day. It was one of the academy's most beloved traditions. Students would bring animals from their home worlds to show the class, teaching everyone about the diverse life forms across the galaxy. "Yes, yes," she chirped happily. "Everyone brings companions. I'm bringing my fluttermoth from home. She glows in 7 different colors." "What is a duke? Is it some kind of earth insect? A small mammal, perhaps?" "I have read that humans keep tiny fluffy creatures called hamsters." Leo opened his mouth to answer, but before he could speak, a low sound came from inside the crate. It was deep and rumbling, almost like distant thunder, but it came from a living throat. Nira froze. Every feather on her body stood straight up. Her instincts, developed over millions of years of evolution on a world where her ancestors were prey animals, screamed at her to run. That sound was not made by anything small and fluffy. That sound was made by something with teeth. "Duke is a bit shy around new places," Leo said calmly, as if he had not noticed her terror. "He will calm down once he gets used to the smells here." What is Duke?" Nira managed to ask, her voice barely above a whisper. "He is a wolf," Leo said. "A gray wolf specifically. I raised him from a pup after he was rescued from poachers back on Earth." Nira did not know what a wolf was, but she knew that whatever made that sound was not a pet. It was a predator, and this human had brought it onto a station filled with species who had evolved as prey. She took a step back, her legs trembling. Leo noticed her reaction, and his expression softened. He knelt down, so he was closer to her eye level, a gesture that somehow made him seem less threatening despite his size. "I know this must seem strange to you," he said gently. "On Earth, humans and wolves have been partners for thousands of years. Duke is not dangerous to anyone here. He is trained, and he trusts me completely. I would never bring him if I thought he would hurt someone. Nira wanted to believe him. His voice was so calm, so certain. But she could not stop the primal fear that gripped her heart. I will take you to your quarters, she said, forcing herself to turn away from the crate. Follow me, please. They walked through the academy corridors in silence. Other students stopped and stared as they passed, curious about the new human. Some waved in greeting. Others whispered to their friends. None of them knew what was inside that crate. Not yet. When they reached the living quarters, Nira showed Leo to his room. It was modest but comfortable, with a sleeping area, a small study space, and a connected bathroom. I am in the room next door, Nira explained, pointing to the wall they shared. If you need anything, you can call me through the communication panel. Thank you, Nira, Leo said, genuinely grateful. I know being assigned to guide a human must have been nerve-wracking. I appreciate you being so welcoming. Nira managed a small smile. Perhaps this would not be so bad. The human seemed nice enough. And surely, whatever a wolf was, it could not be that frightening. She was probably just overreacting because of the strange sound it had made. I will let you settle in, she said, backing toward the door. Rest well. Orientation begins tomorrow. She was almost out the door when Leo spoke again. Nira? One small thing. She paused and looked back at him. Duke will probably howl a bit tonight while he adjusts to the new environment. It is just his way of expressing himself. Please do not be alarmed. Before Nira could ask what howling meant, Leo opened the crate. Something large and gray stepped out into the light. It had 4 powerful legs, a thick coat of fur, and a long snout filled with sharp white teeth. Its eyes were golden and bright, and they fixed on Nira with an intelligence that made her blood run cold. It was built for killing. Every line of its body spoke of speed, strength, and deadly precision. And it was now standing between her and the only exit. The creature opened its mouth, and Nira saw those teeth up close. She was certain she was about to die. Then the wolf yawned widely, scratched behind its ear with its back leg, and padded over to the sleeping area where it curled up into a ball and closed its eyes. Leo chuckled softly. He likes you, he said. He only relaxes that quickly around people he senses are good. Nira did not remember leaving the room. She did not remember walking to her own quarters. The next thing she knew, she was sitting on her bed, her heart pounding, her feathers still standing on end. The human had brought a monster to the academy, and tomorrow everyone would find out. Nira had not slept at all. She had spent the entire night lying in her bed, listening to the sounds coming through the wall. Most of the time, there was silence. But every few hours, a long, mournful sound would echo through the corridors. It rose and fell like a song made of loneliness and wilderness, and it made every prey instinct in her body scream for her to flee. The human had called it howling. Nira called it the most terrifying noise she had ever heard in her life. That'd be why the time the artificial morning light began to brighten the corridors, word had spread through the entire academy. The human had brought a predator. Not just any predator, but something called a wolf, a pack-hunting carnivore from the death world Earth. Students who had been curious about the new human arrival were now avoiding the corridor where his room was located. Nira forced herself to get out of bed. She was his assigned guide, and she had responsibilities. She could not let her fear control her. She stepped out of her room and almost bumped into Leo, who was standing in the hallway with Duke beside him. In the light of day, the wolf looked even more terrifying than before. It stood nearly as tall as Nira herself, with thick gray fur and those unsettling golden eyes. Its ears were pointed and alert, swiveling toward every sound. Its nose twitched constantly, reading the air for information that Nira could not even imagine. She squeaked in fear and pressed herself against the wall. Leo held up his hands in a calming gesture. Easy, easy, he said softly. Duke is on his best behavior. We were just going for a morning walk to help him get used to the station smells. Would you like to come with us? Every logical part of Nira's brain screamed no. But something about Leo's calm confidence made her hesitate. He was standing right next to the creature, close enough for it to bite him at any moment. Yet he showed no fear at all. He was completely relaxed, as if he was standing next to a harmless pet. Maybe she was wrong. Maybe the wolf was not as dangerous as it looked. I suppose I could walk with you," she said, her voice shaking. They walked through the corridors together, with Duke padding along beside Leo on a loose leash. Other students scattered as they approached, pressing themselves against walls or ducking into doorways. One group of Grynthians actually turned and ran in the opposite direction, their heavy footsteps echoing like thunder. Duke noticed all of this attention but remained calm. His tail wagged slowly as he walked, and occasionally he would glance up at Leo as if checking for approval. "He is very well trained," Nira observed, surprised to hear herself speaking normally. "We have been together since he was a pup," Leo explained. "About 4 years now. I raised him after he was rescued from illegal hunters who were going to sell him to a private collector. He was half-starved and terrified of everything when I first got him." Nira looked at the powerful predator walking beside them. It was hard to imagine this creature being afraid of anything. "Wolves are pack animals," Leo continued. "In the wild, they live in family groups and depend on each other for survival. When Duke lost his pack, he was alone and scared. I became his new pack. Now he trusts me completely, and he extends that trust to anyone I trust." "Anyone you trust," Nira repeated. Leo nodded. "He can read my body language better than most humans can. If I am relaxed around someone, he knows that person is safe. If I am tense or worried, he picks up on that too." They had reached a small garden area in the center of the station. It was meant to be a place of relaxation, with artificial plants and gentle lighting. Right now, it was completely empty because everyone had heard they were coming and fled. Leo unclipped Duke's leash, and the wolf immediately began exploring, sniffing at plants and investigating corners. Nira tensed, ready to run, but Duke paid her no attention at all. He was completely focused on cataloging all the new smells of this strange place. "Would you like to meet him properly?" Leo asked as Nira's feathers stood up. "Meet him? But I am scared." "I know." Leo smiled gently. "That is completely natural. Your species evolved as prey animals, and Duke looks like the kind of creature that would have hunted your ancestors. Your instincts are telling you to run, but instincts can be wrong." He knelt down and called Duke over. The wolf trotted to his side and sat, looking up at him with obvious affection. His tail wagged against the floor. "Come here," Leo said to Nira. "Slowly. Let him see you approaching." Nira did not know why she listened. Perhaps it was because she was tired of being afraid. Perhaps it was because something about the bond between Leo and Duke fascinated her. Whatever the reason, she found herself walking slowly toward them, her legs trembling with every step. Duke watched her approach. His golden eyes tracked her movements, and his nose twitched as he took in her scent. But he did not growl. He did not bare his teeth. He simply watched. When she was close enough to touch, Leo gave Duke a command. "Gentle." The wolf lowered his head, and his whole body seemed to soften. His tail wagged more enthusiastically, and he let out a small whining sound that almost sounded friendly. "Hold out your hand," Leo instructed. "Let him sniff you." Nira extended her small feathered hand toward the predator. Her heart was beating so fast she thought it might burst from her chest. She was about to touch something that could kill her in seconds. Duke sniffed her hand carefully. His wet nose brushed against her feathers, and she shivered. Then, to her absolute amazement, he licked her fingers gently. "He likes you," Leo said, grinning. "I told you he only relaxes around good people." Nira stared at the wolf in wonder. This close, she could see that his eyes were not cold or cruel. They were warm and curious, like a child exploring something new. The fear that had gripped her heart began to loosen its hold. "I do not understand," she whispered. "Why is he not attacking? His instincts should tell him to hunt me." "Because I am his pack leader," Leo explained. "And I have made it clear that you are not prey. You are part of our pack now, at least in his mind. He would protect you just as quickly as he would protect me." "Protect me?" Wolves are incredibly loyal. Once they accept someone into their pack, they will defend that person with their lives. Duke sees everyone I care about as family. He would never hurt you, Nira. In fact, he would put himself in danger to keep you safe. Nira looked at the wolf again. He had closed his eyes and was leaning slightly into her touch, enjoying the sensation of her feathers against his fur. This creature, this apex predator from a death world, was not a monster at all. He was a friend, a protector, a companion. She finally understood why humans bonded with such dangerous animals. It was not because they were foolish or reckless. It was because they saw past the teeth and claws to the heart beneath. "Leo," she said quietly, "I think I owe you an apology. I was ready to hate Duke without ever giving him a chance." Leo shook his head. "You do not owe me anything. Fear is natural. What matters is that you were brave enough to look past it. That is more than most people would do." Their moment of peace was interrupted by a heavy sound of footsteps approaching. They turned to see Instructor Bolon, a massive Grinthian professor, marching toward them with a stern expression on his face. "Human," Bolon said, his voice rumbling like an earthquake. "I have received 17 complaints about your creature in the last hour alone. You will explain yourself immediately." Duke's ears flattened, and he pressed closer to Leo's side. But he did not growl or bare his teeth. He simply waited for Leo's command. Nira watched as Leo stood calmly to face the enormous professor. He did not seem intimidated at all. And somehow, that gave her courage too. She stepped forward to stand beside him. "Instructor Bolon," she said, her voice stronger than she expected. "I was afraid too, but this creature is not dangerous. Let Leo explain." Balin's many eyes blinked in surprise. He had not expected the small Palori to defend the human. Leo put a grateful hand on Nira's shoulder, then turned to face whatever came next. Instructor Bolon had seen many strange things in his 40 years of teaching at the Galactic Unity Academy. He had watched a Velesi student accidentally set fire to a classroom during a meditation exercise. He had witnessed a Grinthian food fight that caused structural damage to an entire wing. He had even dealt with a student who had smuggled an illegal stimulant-producing fungus in their luggage. But nothing had prepared him for this. He stood in the garden area, all 6 of his limbs planted firmly on the ground, staring at the human and his wolf. The creature was unlike anything in his experience. It sat beside the human with perfect discipline, its golden eyes watching Bolon with an intelligence that was deeply unsettling. "You brought an apex predator to my academy," Bolon said slowly, each word heavy with disbelief. "A carnivore, a pack hunter. Do you have any idea how many species on this station evolved as prey animals?" Leo remained calm. "I understand your concern, Instructor, but Duke is not a wild animal. He has been trained since he was a pup. He responds to my commands and has never shown aggression toward any person." Never shown aggression. Bolon made a sound that might have been a laugh if it had not been so bitter. That creature is built for aggression. Every part of its body is designed to chase, catch, and kill. "You are right," Leo admitted. "Wolves are predators, but they're also social animals. They form deep bonds with their pack members and will protect them above all else." Duke does not see the students here as prey. He sees them as potential pack members. Balin's many eyes narrowed. "And I am supposed to trust the judgment of a death world creature." "You are supposed to trust me," Leo said firmly. "I am responsible for Duke. I have trained him, raised him, and cared for him for 4 years. If anything happens, I will take full responsibility. But I promise you, nothing will happen." The instructor was silent for a long moment. Behind him, several other students had gathered at the garden entrance, watching the confrontation with nervous expressions. Finally, Bolon spoke again. "I will allow your creature to stay for now, but must be leashed at all times in public areas. If there is even one incident, one moment of aggression, I will have it removed from this station immediately. Do you understand?" Leo nodded. "I understand. Thank you, Instructor." Bolon turned and walked away, his heavy footsteps shaking the floor. The watching students scattered as he passed, and soon Leo and Nira were alone again. Nira let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "That was terrifying," she admitted. "I thought he was going to throw you both off the station." Leo smiled slightly. "Bolon is strict, but he is fair. He gave us a chance. That is all I can ask for." He looked down at Duke, who was still sitting patiently at his side. "Now we just have to prove that we deserve that chance." The next few days were difficult. News of the wolf had spread throughout the entire academy, and reactions ranged from fearful avoidance to outright hostility. Some students crossed to the other side of corridors when they saw Leo and Duke approaching. Others made comments loud enough for Leo to hear, calling Duke a monster or wondering why the academy allowed dangerous beasts on station. Leo handled it all with patience. He kept Duke leashed in public, just as he had promised. He walked the same routes at the same times each day, so students would know when to expect them. He answered questions from anyone brave enough to ask, always calm and polite, but not everyone was satisfied that on the fourth day after his arrival, Leo was called before the Student Safety Council. It was a group of 7 students from different species who handled disputes and concerns that did not rise to the level of faculty involvement. The council chamber was a circular room with seats arranged in a half-moon shape, facing a single chair in the center. Leo sat in that chair with Duke lying at his feet. Nira had insisted on coming as his witness, and she sat in the small gallery area behind him. The council leader, a tall Valesi named Saran, began the proceedings. Leo Hartwell of Earth, you have been called before this council to address concerns about the creature you have brought to our academy. Multiple students have filed formal complaints stating that they do not feel safe with an apex predator on the station. Leo nodded respectfully. I understand their concerns. May I speak to address them? Saran gestured for him to continue. Duke is a wolf, Leo began. On Earth, wolves and humans have a relationship that goes back over 15,000 years. Our ancestors lived alongside wolves, hunted with them, and eventually formed one of the most successful partnerships in our planet's history. A Grenthian council member interrupted. You hunted with predators? Why would any species do such a thing? Because together, we were stronger than either of us alone, Leo explained. Humans had tools and planning. Wolves had speed, strength, and incredible senses. By working together, we could bring down prey that neither of us could catch on our own. He looked around at the council members. Over thousands of years, this partnership deepened. Wolves began to live with human families. They guarded our homes, protected our children, and became part of our families. We changed each other. They became more trusting of us, and we became more loyal to them. But this is not your planet, Saran pointed out. The species here did not evolve alongside predators. Many of us see creatures like your wolf and feel only terror. I know, Leo said softly, and I do not blame anyone for being afraid. Fear is a survival instinct. It kept your ancestors alive. But I'm asking you to trust that Duke is different from the predators your species remembers. He is not here to hunt anyone. He is here because he is my family, and I could not leave my family behind. The room went quiet. Another council member, a small feathered creature similar to Nira, spoke up. You call this predator your family? Yes, Leo said without hesitation. Duke has been with me through some of the hardest times of my life. He has comforted me when I was sad, protected me when I was in danger, and shown me loyalty that I could never repay. He is not my pet. He is my partner. At that moment, the door to the council chamber opened and another human walked in. He was older than Leo, with gray streaks in his dark hair and the confident bearing of someone who had seen much of the galaxy. Sorry I am late, the newcomer said. I am Tomas Rivera, senior human student. I heard there was a council hearing about a wolf. Saran Fronat. This hearing is closed to spectators. I am not here as a spectator, Tomas said. I am here as a witness for the defense. Human perspective on human-animal bonds. He walked to stand beside Leo, looking down at Duke with a knowing smile. Let me tell you something about humans, Tomas said to the council. We are the only species in the known galaxy that deliberately forms bonds with animals that could kill us. We ride on the backs of creatures 10 times our size. We swim with ocean predators. We invite carnivores into our homes and let them sleep in our beds. He shook his head slowly. Other species think we are insane. Maybe we are, but there's a reason we do it. We see ourselves in these animals. We see their strength and their wildness, and we respect it. When a predator chooses to trust us, to protect us, to love us despite everything their instincts tell them, it means something. It means we have earned something precious. He looked at each council member in turn. Leo's wolf is not a threat to this academy. It is an example of what humans can build with trust and patience. If you send Duke away, you will be telling Leo that his family does not matter. And you will be missing an opportunity to understand something beautiful about human nature. The council conferred quietly among themselves. Minutes passed in tense silence. Finally, Saran spoke. The council has decided. The wolf may remain on the station, subject to the conditions already set by Instructor Bolon. However, we'll be watching closely. Any incident will result in immediate removal. Leo stood and bowed his head in gratitude. Thank you. I will not let you down. As they left the council chamber, Nira caught up to them. That was amazing, she said breathlessly. You really changed their minds. Tomas laughed. We planted a seed. Whether it grows or not depends on what happens next. He clapped Leo on the shoulder. Good luck, kid. You got a lot of aliens to convince. Leo looked down at Duke, who wagged his tail happily. We will convince them, he said. One at a time, if we have to. 2 weeks had passed since the council hearing, and life at the academy had settled into a strange new normal. Students still avoided Leo and Duke in the corridors, but the outright hostility had faded. Some had even started nodding and greeting as they passed. A few brave souls had approached to ask questions about wolves, and Leo had answered each one with the same patient enthusiasm. Progress was slow, but it was progress. Nira had become Duke's biggest defender. She ate meals with Leo in the cafeteria, sat next to him in classes, and spent her study hours in his room with the wolf curled at her feet. At first, other Palori had been horrified by her behavior. Now, a few of them were starting to get curious. That IT was a quiet afternoon when everything changed. Leo and Nira were walking through the central courtyard, Duke padding along beside them on his leash. The courtyard was the largest open space on the station, with a high transparent ceiling that showed the stars beyond. Artificial trees lined the pathways, and benches were scattered throughout for students to rest and socialize. Today, the courtyard was unusually crowded. A group of young Palori children had arrived for a school visit, eager to see the famous Galactic Unity Academy. They were tiny things, barely reaching Leo's knee, with fluffy down feathers and enormous curious eyes. Their teachers were guiding them through the courtyard, pointing out various features of the academy and answering their endless questions. The children giggled and chirped happily, completely unaware of the danger that was about to unfold. IT started with a strange humming sound. Leo looked up and saw a maintenance drone flying erratically near the ceiling. Maintenance drones were common on the station, small flying machines that handled repairs and cleaning tasks. But this one was moving wrong. It was jerking and spinning, sparks flying from its body as its systems malfunctioned. Other students noticed it too and started backing away. Then the drone made a terrible screeching sound and dove straight toward the ground, straight toward the group of Palori children. The teachers screamed and tried to gather their students, but there was no time. The drone was falling too fast, its damaged propellers whining as it spun out of control. If it hit those children at that speed, it would kill them. Leo did not think. He just moved as he released Duke's leash and shouted a single word. Guard! The wolf exploded into motion. Duke crossed the courtyard in seconds, his powerful legs eating up the distance. He reached the children just as the drone was about to crash into them and threw himself between the machine and the tiny Palori. The wolf braced himself and snarled, positioning his body as a living shield. The drone struck him on the shoulder and bounced away, its damaged frame spinning across the ground before coming to a stop. Duke staggered from the impact, but held his position, standing over the children protectively. Leo was right behind him. He grabbed the drone and found the emergency shutdown panel, jamming his fingers into it until the machine went completely dead. Only then did he look up to check on Duke and the children. The wolf was bleeding slightly from where the drone had hit him, but he was still standing guard. His golden eyes scanned the area for any other threats, and his body remained tense and ready. The Palori children were huddled behind him, their tiny bodies shaking with fear. But they were unharmed. Every single one of them was safe. One of the children, a little girl with pale blue feathers, reached out and touched Duke's tail. The wolf looked back at her, and something in his expression softened. He lowered his head and made a quiet whining sound, as if to reassure her that everything was okay. The little girl wrapped her small arms around his tail and held on tight. Silence filled the courtyard. Everyone had frozen in place. Students, teachers, staff, even Instructor Bolon, who had come running at the sound of screaming. They all stared at the scene before them, trying to process what they had just witnessed, the predator they had feared, the monster they had wanted removed from the station. It had just risked its life to protect children. One of the Palori teachers approached slowly, her feathers still ruffled with shock. Your creatures saved them, she whispered. It put itself between our children and danger. Leo nodded, still breathing hard from his sprint across the courtyard. That is what wolves do. They protect their pack. But we are not its pack, the teacher said. We are strangers. Prey species. Why would it protect us? Leo looked at Duke, who was now surrounded by curious children. The wolf had laid down on the ground and was allowing them to touch his fur, pet his ears, and examine his paws. He looked content, almost happy, despite his injury. Because I was here, Leo said softly, and I cared about what happened to them. Duke felt that. He knew those children mattered to me, even though I had never met them before. So he protected them. Nira approached and knelt beside Duke, examining the wound on his shoulder. It was not deep, but it would need treatment. He is hurt, she said, her voice filled with concern. He has had worse, Leo replied. But we should get him to the medical bay anyway. Before they could leave, one of the Palori children, the little girl who had been holding Duke's tail, walked up to Leo. She looked up at him with those huge dark eyes and spoke in a small, trembling voice. Is the big fluffy going to be okay? Leo smiled and knelt down to her level. Yes, he's going to be just fine. He is very strong. He saved us, the little girl said. He is a hero. She turned and looked at Duke, who wagged his tail at her. Can I visit him sometimes? She asked. I want to tell him thank you. Leo felt his heart swell with emotion. This was what he had been hoping for. This was what he had been trying to show everyone. Of course you can visit him, Leo said. Duke would like that very much. Instructor Bolon stepped forward, his massive form casting a shadow over the scene. For a moment, Leo thought he was about to receive another lecture about the dangers of keeping predators on the station. Instead, Bolon did something unexpected. He bowed his head toward Duke. I was wrong about you, creature, Bolon said, his deep voice rumbling through the courtyard. I saw only what you could destroy. I did not see what you could protect. You have my respect. He turned to Leo. The leash restriction is lifted. Your wolf has proven himself. A murmur ran through the watching crowd. Students who had spent weeks avoiding Duke were now looking at him with something other than fear in their eyes. Curiosity, wonder, and perhaps just a little bit of admiration. As Leo led Duke toward the medical bay with Nira at his side, he could not help but smile. They had been waiting for a chance to show everyone who Duke really was. And finally, that chance had come. The wolf who everyone thought was a monster had become a hero. And this was just the beginning. Companion Presentation Day arrived with a buzz of excitement that filled every corridor of the academy. The main auditorium had been transformed for the occasion. Rows of seats curved upward from a central stage, capable of holding over 500 students of various sizes and shapes. Holographic displays floated near the ceiling, ready to show close-up views of the smaller companion animals. The air hummed with anticipation. Leo stood backstage with Duke, watching the other students prepare for their presentations. There were dozens of creatures from across the galaxy, each one stranger and more beautiful than the last. A Grinthian student had brought a crystal beetle that sang in frequencies only certain species could hear. A Velesi had a floating cloud creature that changed colors based on its emotional state. Several Palori students were grouped together with their flutter moths, the tiny, glowing insects dancing through the air like living sparks. The presentations went one by one. Each student walked onto the stage, introduced their companion, and explained something about their species and their bond. The audience applauded politely, asked questions, and generally enjoyed learning about the different worlds of the galaxy. Leo and Duke were scheduled last. As the presentations continued, Leo noticed that more and more students were glancing toward the backstage area where he waited. Word had spread about what Duke had done in the courtyard. Everyone knew that the human's wolf had saved those children. But knowing something and seeing it with their own eyes were very different things. Finally, the second-to-last presenter finished. A small Palori student with a beautiful glowing moth received enthusiastic applause as she walked off the stage. The announcer, a holographic projection of the Academy's administrative AI, spoke in a clear voice that echoed through the auditorium. Our final presenter today is Leo Hartwell from the planet Earth. His companion is a wolf. The auditorium went completely silent. Leo took a deep breath and walked onto the stage with Duke at his side. The wolf had been brushed until his gray fur shone. His wound from the drone incident had healed nicely, leaving only a small bare patch that would grow back in time. He walked with calm confidence, his golden eyes scanning the audience without any sign of fear or aggression. Some students in the front rows leaned back instinctively. Others stared with wide eyes. A few actually gasped at the sight of the predator walking freely onto the stage. Leo stepped up to the speaking platform and looked out at the crowd. "I know what you are all thinking," he began. "You are thinking that I am crazy for bringing a carnivore to a station full of species who evolved as prey. You are thinking that one wrong move, one moment of lost control, and this wolf could hurt someone." He paused, letting his words sink in. "I understand that fear. It is natural. Your instincts are telling you to run from something that looks like Duke. Those instincts kept your ancestors alive." He looked down at Duke, who sat patiently beside him. "But I'm here to tell you that instincts can be wrong. And I am here to show you something that my species learned thousands of years ago." Leo began walking slowly around the stage, and Duke followed him in perfect step. On Earth, about 15,000 years ago, humans and wolves were enemies. We competed for the same prey. We feared each other. But somehow, despite all that fear and competition, something incredible happened. We became partners. He stopped and faced the audience again. Scientists on my world still debate exactly how it happened. Maybe a group of wolves started following human hunters, eating the scraps we left behind. Maybe humans found orphan wolf pups and decided to raise them. However it started, it changed both our species forever. Leo gave a command, and Duke demonstrated a perfect sitting position. Wolves who lived with humans became more trusting, more trainable, more attuned to human emotions. Humans who lived with wolves became more loyal, more protective, more understanding of the wild world around them. We evolved together, side by side, for thousands of generations. Another command. Duke lay down with his head on his paws. Eventually, those wolves became what we call dogs. They're the most popular companion animals on Earth, loved by billions of people. But some of us, like me, still choose to bond with wolves. We choose the original partnership, the one that started everything. Leo knelt down beside Duke and put a hand on the wolf's head. Duke is not a pet. He is not a tool. He is my partner, my protector, and my family. When I am sad, he comforts me. When I am in danger, he defends me. And when someone I care about is threatened, he risks his own life to keep them safe. A murmur ran through the audience. Everyone remembered what had happened with the Palori children. "Some of you saw what he did in the courtyard," Leo continued. "He threw himself between a group of children and a falling drone. He did not know those children. He had no reason to protect them except that I was there and I wanted them to be safe. That was enough for him." He stood up again. "This is what humans and wolves have built together. This is the bond that has lasted 15,000 years. Trust, loyalty, love that crosses the boundary between predator and prey." Leo looked at Nira, who was sitting in the front row. She smiled at him and gave a small nod of encouragement. "I know I am asking you to look past millions of years of evolution," Leo said. "I know I am asking you to trust something that every instinct tells you is dangerous. But I believe that if you give Duke a chance, you will see what I see. Not a monster, not a threat, just a loyal friend who would do anything to protect the people he loves." He turned to the audience, and spread his hands. Would anyone like to meet him? For a long moment, no one moved. Then Nira stood up. She walked slowly toward the stage, her blue and white feathers catching the light. Every eye in the auditorium followed her as she climbed the steps and approached the wolf. Duke watched her come. His tail began to wag. When she reached him, Nira knelt down and held out her hand. Duke sniffed it gently, then licked her fingers with his rough, pink tongue. "Hello, Duke," Nira said softly. "Thank you for being my friend." The wolf made a happy, whining sound and pressed his head against her chest. Nira wrapped her arms around him and hugged him. The collective gasp went through the audience. A prey species hugging an apex predator. It should have been impossible. It should have been terrifying. Instead, it was beautiful. More students began to stand. One by one, they made their way down to the stage. A Grynthian who had been one of the loudest critics approached with trembling limbs and was rewarded with a gentle sniff and a wagging tail. A group of Alessi knelt in a circle around Duke and meditated on his energy, declaring it peaceful and warm. Soon, there was a line of students waiting to meet the wolf. Leo stood back and watched with tears in his eyes. This was everything he had hoped for. This was the moment when fear became understanding, when suspicion became acceptance. Instructor Bolon approached Leo from the side of the stage. "You have done something remarkable," the massive professor said quietly. "You have changed how an entire station thinks about predators." Leo shook his head. "Duke did that. I just gave him the chance to show who he really is." Bolon looked at the wolf, surrounded by students from a dozen different species. "Perhaps," he said, "but you were the one who believed in him when no one else would. That matters." The applause that filled the auditorium was the loudest anyone had ever heard at a companion presentation day. It went on for minutes, echoing off the walls and washing over Leo and Duke like a wave of pure joy. They had done it. They had proven that trust could overcome fear. And this was only the beginning of everything they would accomplish together. 3 months had passed since Companion Presentation Day, and the Galactic Unity Academy had transformed in ways no one could have predicted. Duke had become the most popular creature on the entire station. Students who had once fled at the sight of him now waved and called his name as he passed. Cafeteria staff saved scraps of meat for him. Even the maintenance drones, reprogrammed after the courtyard incident, would beep cheerfully when they detected his presence. Nira had jokingly started calling him the Academy mascot, and the name had stuck. Leo walked through the corridors with Duke trotting happily beside him. No leash required. Other students smiled and nodded as they passed. A group of young Palori ran up and asked if they could pet Duke before their class started. Leo said yes, of course, and watched as the wolf gently allowed tiny feathered hands to stroke his fur. This was the new normal, and Leo loved every moment of it. He made his way to Instructor Ballin's office for a meeting that the professor had requested earlier that morning. When he arrived, he found not just Bolon, but also Tomas and 3 other members of the faculty waiting for him. "Please sit," Bolon said, gesturing to a chair. Leo sat down, and Duke immediately curled up at his feet. "We have been discussing something for several weeks," Bolon began, "and we have finally reached a decision that we wanted to share with you." Leo felt a flicker of nervousness. Had he done something wrong? Had there been a complaint? But Ballin's expression was not stern. If anything, he looked pleased. "Since your arrival, you have changed how this academy thinks about human-animal relationships," Bolon continued. "Students who were terrified of predators are now asking questions about Earth's fauna. Teachers who dismissed the idea of cross-species bonding are reconsidering their positions. You have opened minds that we thought were permanently closed." The professor leaned forward. "We would like you to teach a course next semester, an elective class on human-animal partnerships and cross-species trust. You would be a guest lecturer working alongside our behavioral sciences department." Leo stared at him in shock. "You want me to teach? But I'm just a student." Tomas laughed from his seat near the window. "You are a student who brought a wolf to a station full of prey species and convinced them all to love him. I think you are qualified. We have already received over 200 sign-ups for the class," one of the faculty members added. "It will be the most popular elective in 3 decades." Leo looked down at Duke, who was watching him with those calm golden eyes. "What do you think, buddy?" Leo asked quietly. "Ready to be a teaching assistant?" Duke's tail thumped against the floor. Leo looked back at the waiting faculty and smiled. "I would be honored." The meeting continued with discussions of curriculum and scheduling, but Leo's mind was already racing with possibilities. He could teach about domestication, about the history of human-animal bonds, about the psychology of trust between different species. He could bring in examples from Earth and show how humans had partnered with everything from horses to dolphins to elephants. And Duke could be there for every lesson, living proof that predators and prey could coexist. After the meeting, Leo walked through the academy grounds with a lightness in his step that he had not felt in months. The artificial sunset was painting the transparent ceiling with shades of orange and pink, and the pathways were filled with students enjoying the evening air. He found Nira in their usual spot, a small garden alcove with comfortable benches and flowering plants. She was studying something on her tablet, but she looked up and smiled when she saw him approaching. "Good news?" she asked, reading his expression. "The best," Leo said, sitting down beside her. "They want me to teach a class next semester about human-animal bonds." Nira's eyes went wide with excitement. "Leo, that is amazing. You're going to be the most popular lecturer in the entire academy." "We are going to be popular," Leo corrected. "I want you to help me. You can give the perspective of someone who overcame their fear. Show other prey species that it is possible to see past their instincts." Nira considered this for a moment, then nodded. "I would like that," she said. "Someone told me once that fear is natural, but what matters is having the courage to look past it. I think I would like to share that lesson." Duke patted over and settled down between them, his head resting on Nira's lap. She automatically began scratching behind his ears, something she had learned he loved. "I received a message today from the Human Student Affairs office," Leo said. 3 new human students are transferring next semester. Each of them has requested permission to bring companion animals." Nira's feathers ruffled with surprise. "More predators?" "Not exactly," Leo said. "One is bringing a retired search and rescue dog. Another is bringing a therapy horse, though I have no idea how they're going to fit it in the corridors. And the third is bringing a falcon." "A falcon? A bird of prey. Humans train them to hunt small animals. It is an ancient tradition called falconry." Nira looked down at Duke, then back at Leo. "Before you came, I would have been terrified by that news," she admitted. "Now I'm just curious. I want to meet these animals. I want to understand why humans bond with them." "That is exactly why I am teaching this class," Leo said. "To help everyone understand. The galaxy is full of species that fear each other because of evolution and instinct. But humans have proven that those barriers can be broken. If we can bond with wolves, maybe the Palori can bond with Grenthians. Maybe the Velesi can work alongside species they would normally avoid. Maybe fear does not have to define how we interact with each other." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the artificial stars appear one by one in the ceiling above. Finally, Nira spoke. "You never told me how you met Duke," she said. "The full story. You mentioned he was rescued from poachers, but there must be more to it." Leo nodded slowly, his hand moving to rest on Duke's back. "I was 16, he began. My father worked for a wildlife protection agency. One night, they raided an illegal operation that was capturing wolves to sell as exotic pets. Most of the wolves were adults and had to be released back into the wild. But there was one pup who was too young to survive on his own. He had been taken from his mother too early." Duke's ears twitched at the sound of Leo's voice. "My father brought him home for me to raise. I was supposed to release him when he was old enough to fend for himself. But by then, we had bonded too deeply. He would not leave me, and I could not leave him. So we became partners." Leo smiled at the memory. "He saved my life once, you know. I was hiking in the mountains and stumbled across a mountain lion. Duke put himself between me and that cat without hesitation. He would have died fighting for me. Luckily, the mountain lion decided we were not worth the trouble and left." Nira stroked Duke's fur gently. "He is a hero on Earth too," she said. "Not just here. He has always been a hero," Leo agreed. "I just gave him chances to show it." The evening deepened around them, and eventually they had to return to their rooms. As they walked through the corridors, students called out greetings to Duke. A young Grynthian asked for a photo with the famous wolf. Two Palori children ran up to give Duke treats they had saved from dinner. By the time they reached their living quarters, Duke was practically glowing with happiness. Nira paused at her door. "Leo," she said, "when you first arrived, I thought you were the strangest human I would ever meet. Now I think you might be the best friend I have ever had. You and Duke both." Leo felt warmth spread through his chest. "We feel the same about you," he said. "Duke considers you packed now. That is not something he gives lightly." Nira beamed at the wolf, who wagged his tail in confirmation. "Good night, Leo." "Good night, Duke." "Good night, Nira." Leo entered his room and let Duke jump onto the bed, something that was technically against Academy regulations, but that no one bothered to enforce anymore. As he lay down beside his wolf, Leo thought about how far they had come. From feared outsiders to beloved members of the community. From suspicion to trust. From loneliness to family. Somewhere out there, more humans were preparing to come to this academy, bringing their own animal partners with them. The academy was changing, adapting, growing to accept what humans had to offer, and it had all started with one human and one wolf, who had refused to let fear define them. Duke made a contented rumbling sound and pressed closer to Leo's side. "We did good, buddy," Leo whispered. "We really did." The wolf huffed in agreement and closed his golden eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new opportunities. But tonight, they could rest, knowing that they had changed a small corner of the galaxy for the better, together, as they always had been, as they always would be.